Hi guys, I'm Ashley and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a very overdue top favorite books of 2016 video. We are pretty much done with January, so I'm a full month behind on posting this, but I just got a little bit behind on filming because I lost track of my schedule and time flew away from me, but I narrowed it down to 11 books, which is kind of a weird number. It would have made more sense to do like 5 or 10 because that's a whole number, or even 16 for 2016, but I just kind of was going through my Goodreads and these are the books that stood out for me in my reading year in 2016, and they're just happened to be 11. So these are my top 11 favorite books of 2016. So for number 11 we have The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, which I actually listened to on audiobook. I would really like to have a physical copy of this so that I can reread it in physical form instead of audiobook, because I'm sure that'll probably be a slightly different reading experience. But the audiobook itself was really good. I liked the narrator. His voice really reminded me of that point in time, of characters those age. And this is about a group of brothers. A couple of them are actually brothers, but most of them are just like brothers in spirit, basically, and about their sort of gang that they have, and they're called the Greasers, and they are kind of at the like lower end, if you want to call it that, of society, where they don't make as much money, they're not as affluent. And there's a whole other side of their town that makes more money, more snobby, more stuck up, like rich kids. And so this is about the Greasers and their relationship with each other, and a lot of things, like heightened tension things, end up happening, and it's about that society and how they sort of deal with all of the things that happen to them. They cause a lot of drama, and there's some, you know, running away from home happening, and fights, like fist fights happening, so it's really dramatic. It's one of the first books, I believe, that was targeted towards young adults, being that it was written about and for teenagers. I just thought it was really well done, very ahead of its time, incredibly character driven. Ponyboy is the main character. He's the narrator, and he's the youngest member of this gang. Two of his brothers are in the gang with him. You know, they all take care of each other, and they have a really hard life, and it really focuses on their struggles and, like I said, their personalities and characters. It's a very emotional read. Like, you really get to know Ponyboy's brain basically in depth, just not only because it's from his point of view, but also just because the author does a really good job of letting you know what that narrator thinks of every situation and of his life basically, and how his life has turned out. And so it was just very introspective, very interesting, incredibly well written. It was like a masterpiece, honestly. It was just amazing, and I highly recommend it. It's a classic. It's really short, very emotional journey, and full of anger and heart and love even, and I would just highly recommend it. If you haven't picked it up yet, definitely give it a try, because it's, like I said, short, and it's a really well-known piece of work. And if you're gonna be, you know, trying to read some of the classics, this is a little bit more of an accessible one. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Number 10 is Soulless by Gail Carriger. I'm just gonna hold up really fast Changeless, which is the second book of the series. Soulless is the first book. It's the Parasol Protectorate series. This is Changeless, the second of the Parasol Protectorate series, and I'm in the middle of it, but I lent number 1, Soulless, to my best friend, so that's why I'm not holding a copy of that one. So I'm going to put this down since this isn't the actual book. But Soulless is about this woman named Alexia who is living in Victorian England, and it's a paranormal setting. There are vampires, werewolves, ghosts, and she is what's called a soulless, so she doesn't possess a soul, and she is therefore able to take away the supernaturalness of these other creatures. So like if a werewolf touches her, they become not werewolf anymore. If a vampire touches her, they lose their fangs and stuff. So she lacks the soul, whereas supernatural beings have extra soul, which is why they're supernatural. And this first book, Soulless, is about a mystery where a vampire has accidentally been killed by Alexia, and she's receiving a lot of heat for this and a lot of attention from the supernatural world, unwanted attention, dangerous attention. She and this werewolf, Lord Macone, he is like basically the head of the werewolf clan. They're in in England where she lives, and they work together to try and get her out of trouble constantly, and she is just a hoot. Alexia is like an incredibly strong-willed character, and she is just like both physically strong and mentally strong, and she is ahead of her time, and it just believes in like rights and feminism and being her own person, and doesn't let anybody force her to do anything. She really takes charge of her life in every situation she's put in. And she's so funny. She's just absolutely hilarious. And I adore her. I wish I had a little bit of Alexia in me, just because she's just an all-around amazing character. And this book was full of like romance and adventure and action, and there was a whole mystery plot, like a whodunit sort of plot, and like underground society, so it really has a little bit of everything, and it was just a really fun read, and I really highly recommend it. It was a really nice change of pace, and it has everything in it. I can't recommend it enough, honestly. Number 9 is Confess by Colleen Hoover, and I don't have a physical copy of this at the moment because I read it in audiobook, and I did love the audiobook. I do, upon like further reflection, I realized that I probably should have actually read a physical copy of it, because apparently examples of Owen's artwork are actually in the book itself, and that would have been really great to have on handy instead of just having like Owen or Auburn describe the paintings. It would have been nice to actually have the paintings in front of me, so I might get this, but I have a reading goal for 2017 that will not allow me to get this, so we will see how that works out. But anyway, I digress. Confess is about Auburn Reed, who is this young woman. She's about 21, 22, and she's moved to Texas to become a hairdresser, basically, and also to get like a fresh start in her life, because something has happened to her, and she needs a job, and she needs a place to stay, and she needs a better cost of living, and the only place she can get that really is in Texas. I can't tell you what is happening that she needs to move to Texas for the cost of living and what has sort of happened in her life, because that's a huge spoiler, and you don't find that out until like a little bit through the book. But she runs into Owen, who is an artist. He has his own art studio that makes really good money, and he has a sign outside his door that says he wants to hire somebody, and so she takes that job as well as becoming a hairdresser, and they meet and they click really instantly, but drama unfolds and they can't always be together, and it's really, really dramatic, really emotional. I sped through this. I listened to it whenever I could. When I wasn't listening to it, I was thinking about it. It was just all-consuming. I loved it, and I know that a lot of other Colleen Hoover books have problematic issues, but I didn't find that in this book. There were problematic things in it, but they were like addressed as such in this book. Like the things that were crappy that people did were because they were a villain. Like, you know they're a villain in this book, and you know that what they're doing is wrong. It's not romanticized or made to believe that it's anything good, so this isn't anything like those other Colleen Hoover books, in my opinion, but it is addicting. It is amazing. So many twists and turns that I was not expecting, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. It got me out of a huge reading slump, and I love it. I love it so much. And if you are in a reading slump and if you like new adult romance, I seriously recommend this to you. It is dramatic. It is page-turning. It is amazing. Number 8 is the 10th Charlie Davidson book, which was The Curse of the 10th Grave. This is by Dorinda Jones, and no surprise here that one of her books made it onto my list. This is one of my favorite series of all time. It is about Charlie Davidson, who is the Grim Reaper, and she is a independently contracted PI, and she is a lot of other amazing things, and it is about her and her relationship with this man named Reyes, and her as the Grim Reaper solving mysteries not only of spirits who have passed away, but also mysteries of her as a PI. It's really interesting. I can't really tell you what the 10th book is about because you have to read 1 through 9 to even understand number 10, and that would just be full of spoilers, so this was just amazing. It delivered like it always does. It was funny and it was interesting. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Please read this series. Do it now. You won't be disappointed. Number 8 is The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan. This is the first book in the Trials of Apollo series, and I just loved this so much more than a Magnus Chase series, so I was really worried when Magnus Chase came out and then this came out, because I thought that this would be like Magnus Chase, which I didn't really enjoy, so I was worried that this was going to be like that, but it wasn't. It's so hilarious. It is just absolutely, like, cracked me up. It was so great, and it has some characters from previous novels that I just absolutely died when I found out that they were in these books, and it's just everything that me as a Rick Riordan fangirl could want, and so it was great. It's about Apollo, who has been basically cursed by his father, Zeus, to be like a teenager, like an acne filled, awkward teenager instead of the beautiful god Apollo, and it's basically so that he can learn a lesson. But also, one of his oracles is missing, and the whole area around the oracle is like kind of dying, and so he has to basically revive the oracles, or else like the whole Greek culture as it is kind of gonna be gone, which, you know, is pretty tragic. So he has to redeem himself by fixing all of that, and he meets some characters along the way who are absolutely adorable, and he is helped out by some of our favorites, and this just gave me all the feels and was really amazing and was so much better than Magnus Chase in my opinion, and I'm so happy about that. Number 6 is This Raging Light by Estelle Laure. This is about this girl named Luce and her little sister Rennie. She has to end up taking care of her little sister and paying all her bills while still going to school and having a job because her mom and dad have basically like run out on both of them. So it's just the two of them, and her little sister is still in elementary school. I think she's in like 5th or 4th grade. So Luce has to take care of the household and her little sister all by herself. She's only 17, and the start of the novel is when her mom leaves. From the beginning, we get some really traumatic things that are happening, and it is just so gripping and so heart-wrenching, and I absolutely loved it, and I really identified with it because a lot of the story talks about how Luce manages the whole household and everything, because you know, when you're tied on money, you have to really get creative and inventive on how to make ends meet and how to, like, put food on the table and stuff. And she's trying to do all that while at the same time still letting Rennie be a kid and not have to deal with all of these horrible, like, life things that are happening. She wants her to still have fun and still be a child and not have to stress about whether or not she's gonna eat. She wants Luce herself to be the only one stressing about that. So she's trying to be a mom and a sister and a caretaker and a senior in high school, and she has a little bit of help from her best friend and her best friend's brother, and so that's really good. Her relationship with the two of them is great. They really help her out as much as they can, but a lot of this novel is about how despite how much they help, Luce really feels like she is in this on her own because they can't quite understand what she's going through. And so that was just a really interesting struggle to read about. You know, it's technically a contemporary and adult novel, but it felt a little more real because of the subject matter, and that was really nice. It was really about family and being an adult and growing up sooner than you have to grow up, which is something I had to do, and I love stories that are about things like that, about those real life struggles and growing up fast. So this was really an amazing read for me. I borrowed it from a friend, so I don't have my own copy, and I really highly recommend it. I don't think enough people are reading it. I don't see it really on BookTube very much, so I really want to get like the word out there. This is a great book, and you all should very, very, very much go read it as soon as possible. Number 5 is Vendetta by Catherine Doyle. This is the first book in the Blood for Blood series, and if I could, I'd put both number 1 and number 2 in this spot, but I feel like that's cheating, so I'm just going to leave it at number 1. And the only one I have here with me is number 3, which is Mafiosa, because I lent out number 1 and 2 to my best friend so she could read it. But this is the third one, so if you're interested, this is what those books look like. But I'm going to put it down since, again, this isn't the right book. But Vendetta is marketed as a young adult Italian mafia version of Romeo and Juliet. And that is incredibly accurate, but do not be put off by this description because it is amazing. It is about this girl named Sophie Gracewell who is living with her mom, and only her mom because her dad is currently in prison. And at the start of this book, these 5 brothers move in who it turns out are a part of the Italian mafia, and they move into this really big, really creepy house down the street, and she becomes infatuated with one of them and starts to have a relationship with one of them, even though she shouldn't because he's part of the Italian mafia. And so it's about that, and it is really dramatic and really huge roller coaster and full of crazy things that happen. But like I said, don't be put off by it. And it gets over the top a lot of times just because of its content. Like I said, it's about 5 teenage brothers who are all part of the Italian mafia. Like, of course it's going to be over the top, but it's really good. It is really gripping. I read it really fast. It's super readable. Just so interesting and full of like amazing plot things that happen, and just like violence and fights and emotions and love and heartache, and just so, it reads like a play basically, and I can't recommend it enough. You'll fly through it if you read it. And shout out to Audrey from Audrey's Book Nook, whose Tumblr I will leave linked down below, for letting me know this book exists and for making me obsessed with it, because I have a lot of feelings about this book now. So thanks a lot, Audrey. Number 5 is The Deal by Elle Kennedy, and this is a new adult book, and I read this in ebook, so I don't have a physical copy of it. And this is, like I said, a new adult romance book about this girl, Hannah Wells, who is in her last year in college. And Hannah is a music major. She's the singer, and she has her eye on this guy in one of her classes, but she is untrusting of men because of some experiences that have happened to her in the past, and so she's not quite sure how to be forward with him and how to make that step towards like asking him out. So she goes to this other guy in her class who is Garrett, and he is the captain of the hockey team, and he's egotistical and full of himself. But in exchange for her tutoring him, he agrees to help her like learn how to flirt and get the attention of this other guy, and it's just really fun. I honestly loved the like back and forth between Garrett and Hannah, and the romance that Hannah had was really great, and just a fun, you know, romance. But on another note, this also ended up making it so high on my list, which may seem weird, but the reason for it is because Hannah has had sexual assault in her past, and the really good thing about this book is that it deals with her sexual assault like a couple years afterwards, so we get to see the effect of the sexual assault on her and what the random triggers are that still end up happening in her life, which is really important because those triggers don't just go away. And so it was nice to have insight into what sort of, you know, what does trigger those flashbacks and emotions for her, and also how it ended up affecting her parents, her situation, her town, everything. You know, her and her parents ended up being ostracized after what happened to her. And also I feel like it made the whole topic of sexual assault a little, 1, more interesting, and 2, more accessible, because while it's a really serious topic, and this book keeps it serious, this book doesn't bring any levity to sexual assault. You know, it makes sure that the sexual assault is treated as a bad thing. It never makes light of the situation. But at the same time, it also, because it's in a fictional form and we're not reading it as this really sort of heart-wrenching, difficult to read nonfiction book, and a lot of times if you read about rape and sexual assault in nonfiction, it just is really just gritty and tough to get through. But when it's fictional, we can read it and learn about it and learn about how important the topic is without maybe getting so sad or depressed about it, which, I mean, you should get sad and depressed about it. It's horrible what happens to women, and men, you know, obviously are victims of sexual assault and rape too, but sometimes the first step is maybe to read it in fiction so that you can understand it and then go do your research with nonfiction books. So I just think this was a really great example of that, and I am really interested in reading more books like this. So if you know of any, please let me know. If you're interested in talking about that motif of sexual assault in like a fiction book, also let me know. I'd love to talk about this more in depth with you. I'm really interested in studying this in my postgraduate school that I'm going to be applying to, so I'd love to talk with you guys more about this, and I highly recommend this book for everybody to read. Number 3 is Vengeance Road by Erin Bowman. This is about this girl named Kate Bishop, who is, I believe, 18 years old, and she lives out in the Midwest on this ranch, and her father is murdered in cold blood in front of her house, basically, by this gang in the Midwest. And so when that happens, she goes on a mission to find this gang and basically kill them all as vengeance for her dad. And to do this, she goes to one of her dad's old family friends, which ends up being this guy and all of his sons and daughters, and 2 of his sons go on this vengeance mission with her to go track down this gang and find them and make them pay, basically. And it is amazing. It is outstanding. Like, I wish there were more young adult Western books, because this was fantastic. Not only was it gripping and completely unputdownable. I read it in one day for a readathon over summer in 2016, but it was just well written. It had great descriptions of, you know, the landscape, and it had great prose, but like the plot itself was just so readable and so action-packed. I just kept turning the pages without even like realizing it. And Kate is an outstanding main character. She is so strong. She is so willing to do anything. She is not afraid of anything, it would seem, and so focused and determined. It is fantastic. I really highly recommend this. I cannot find or think of a single flaw in this book, so I seriously recommend that everybody read it. It's so fast, and also this cover is like goals. Seriously, this cover is beautiful. If I ever write a book, I want this cover artist to do my book for me, because praise this cover. Number 2 is Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur, and I'm sure I butchered her last name, so I do apologize for that. This is a book of poetry that has been gaining a lot of hype on Instagram and online and here on YouTube, and it is so deserved because this is beautiful. This is an absolute work of art in my opinion. It is full of heart and emotion and strength, and it just speaks to some things that people really need to hear. A lot of these poems are about strength and feminism, and, you know, not letting your demons get better of you, and how to get through the really tough times when you just can't see the light. And just, it's amazing. It's so well done, and I found myself relating to so many of these poems in an absolute deep guttural level. I can't even describe to you how important this book is to me. Like, I was so emotional reading this. There are probably tear stains throughout this book from when I cried reading some of these poems. I've been telling all my friends to read it because it feels like this book is my heart. Like, if you want to know what my heart looks like, read these books, or read these poems rather, because they're amazing. I can't believe this amazing piece of art that Rupi has made. She has an Instagram. I highly recommend checking that out. She did a TED Talk where she did a verbal, spoken word version of one of her poems, which is outstanding and moving. I can't recommend this enough. I'm kind of getting emotional just talking about it, honestly. So please go pick this up. It's so well done. And number 1 is actually really surprising that this ended up being number 1, but also not, because it's really well done. I just never thought when I read it was going to stay number 1 throughout the year. I read it in like February of 2016, and I don't have my own copy of it because I lent it from the library. That is The Sacred Lies of Minnow Bly by Stephanie Oakes. This is a book about a girl who was previously part of basically a religious cult that is really like old school. They basically live kind of like Amish people, and it takes place in the not so distant future. It starts out, I'm just going to tell you, the first page is of Minnow, who is standing down at this man who appears to have been beaten bloody, and looking at him, standing over him, talking about her lack of hands, how she has stumps instead of hands because her hands have been cut off. And then it flashes forward in like the next page to her being in jail. And so it retroactively tells the story of her and what led up to the events of her being put in jail. So while she's talking to her cellmate and her psychologist and everything like that, she tells everything about her life and her situation and how she ended up where she was. And it's fantastic. It is gripping. It is full of mystery, honestly, because you're trying to figure out what the heck happened to Minnow. And it's sad. Lots of parts of it, obviously, because her whole story is just so sad. Everything she went through is sad. But it's also incredibly interesting because, you know, she lived this sort of Amish lifestyle. And so when she goes to prison, she encounters language and books and computers and other types of clothing and people for the first time ever. And so to see, you know, all of those things through her eyes was really interesting. And she's so eager to learn everything because she, you know, was starving for all of this information all of her life and just was never given it because she lived a very oppressed life, honestly. And it was just amazing. It was outstanding. It was well written. The pacing of the plot was great. You know, when we would go back in time, I didn't feel jolted or anything like that. Her flashes back to her previous parts of her life made sense in conjunction with where she was in the present. So that was really well done. It just flowed really easily, and, you know, you just get to know Minnow so intricately. It was outstanding, and I highly recommend it. There is nothing like it out there. I can't think of a single book like this, honestly. There's no plot. in a young adult book I've ever read like this. So highly recommend it, like ASAP. And that's it. Those were my top favorite books of 2016. Let me know what some of your favorite books of 2016 were in the comments down below. And please feel free to subscribe or like this if you enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Happy reading. Bye!